I think you were debating about the functions question with Debarpita. I think you can raise that to me. That would be okay. That 30-year one that you just talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chitakshi, tell me when you're ready, I think we'll start.
Yes, so we can start.
Okay, then thank you very much, Chitakshi. It's my friends and colleagues. It's my privilege to welcome you for the 170th webinar at INHAF's series on Rethinking City. As you may probably know, we've been organizing this webinar series for close to 3 years now. Today's webinar on improving quality of municipal expenditure is second webinar in the series on strengthening municipal finance. The first one on augmenting municipal revenue was on 12th July, it's about 2 weeks ago. And the third one, and probably the last one in the series, is planned for early August or mid-August. I hope those who are interested will join, and we will let you know when it takes place and who are the panelists, because who joins depends on who the panelists are, so we will let you know. Now, before I introduce to this webinar series and its purpose into the why we are doing it, let me first thank the key speakers today's webinar, and we have many, 4, 5. And that includes the moderator, that is Sarthak Pradhan, who is a public finance researcher at Takshila Institution. He was so good when we had him in one of our earlier webinars that we instantly spotted his talent and requested to organize this webinar series on municipal finance. We're very grateful that he has spent considerable time organizing these events and, of course, moderating it. He has been a wonderful moderator. Then we are grateful to Ravikant Bhai for his constant support and guidance. Being an INHAF trustee, he is insider and is one of us. But he's so good and he's so well informed that we have chosen to repeat him. And I want to tell Ravikant Bhai, by popular demand, lots of people phone me to say, Ravikant Bhai ko le aao. So I said, thank you very much. We will do it again. Thank you. Ravikant Bhai knows the real life situation, and his insistence on practicality makes him very special. Let me also welcome and thank Debarpita Roy ji. No, Debarpita Roy ji, theek hai. Who is a fellow at Center for Social and Economic Progress. Prabhat Kumar ji, who is head of Public Finance Management at Janagraha, and Dr. Tarun Arora, a professor at O.P. Jindal Global University. As you would see, we have some very brilliant people on the subject and look forward to a rich discussion on this very important topic. Let me also tell you that Sarthak ji and INHAF have publicly committed that besides organizing this webinar series, they will also publish a white paper on this subject. And I want to recommit that we will do it, and we will do it rather well, and we will require your support and assistance in doing so. But before I hand over mic to Sarthak Bhai to moderate the session, let me tell you briefly why we have been organizing these webinars on Rethinking City for the past 3 years. As you probably know, under this webinar series, we have benefit of interacting with over 500 urban experts, specialists, professionals, researchers, community groups, and solution makers from across the world. And they have presented to us as many as 45 to 50 urban themes and sub-themes. So it's rather well in terms of subjects that we have dealt with. This webinar series, among other things, is producing many knowledge products. And that includes the first book on conservation and Indian cities. And the second book, which is in the making, is the city economy. We are very much on the task and should be able to do this in the next 3 months' time. Let me tell you the underlying rationale and immediate purpose of this webinar series. And this is very important, is to germinate seeds for and contribute to building an operational societal partnership of multiple stakeholders to prepare for and respond to a very difficult urban challenge that we are up against. It is based on a deeply felt concern that India's urban challenge is very complex and daunting. And we as people, we as government, we as professionals, we as civil society have not understood its dimensions adequately. And that lack of understanding is reflecting in the quality of cities we have. Look at whatever you look at, whatever you examine, be that urban planning, be that water, be that governance, be that finance, be that sustainability, be that slum, or be that housing. Our cities are saddled with intricate problems and challenges. And it is clear to us that meeting India's urban challenge, which I often describe as more demanding than even the climate challenge, is going to require a lot more than what is on offer currently. It appears that various stakeholders operating on their own from their respective vantage points may not be able to do justice to the complexity of the task. What is needed in order to meet the challenge adequately is a collective effort, a wider, multidimensional, multi-focus, and multi-layer societal partnership. And this webinar series is trying to put multiple dimensions of urban challenge on the public platform. And I think that makes it rather special and rather important. This is a small and modest contribution to that particular effort, and there is a long way to go. But we believe this is the right direction. This is what is required to be done. And it's absolutely true that a wider nothing less than wider societal partnership in search of new approaches, new ways of working, new solutions is going to work in the context of daunting and difficult urban challenge. So that is the context in which we have been working on this webinar series. And we intend to continue this for at least 200 webinars. There is another 100 webinars. And this is not the number. It is the complexity of the task. And I think today you're going to see the second or the second one on municipal finance, which is very complex. And with this, Sarthak Bhai, to you to conduct this we look forward to this very demanding and very useful effort. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Kirtiji, for the introduction to the series and for introducing the panelists for today's session. I welcome Dr. Debarpita, Mr. Prabhat, Dr. Ravikant Ji, Dr. Tarun to what promises to be a fantastic discussion. Good evening to the audience here. I'm Sarthak, an assistant professor at Takshila Institution, an independent center for research and education in public policy. I welcome you all to this webinar on improving the quality of municipal expenditures in India. Kirtiji has beautifully set the context for today's discussion, but I would just like to quickly outline today's agenda, how the next 1.5 hours will be. So resource mobilization has typically been a weak point for municipal bodies in India, but it seems to be receiving sufficient attention, at least in the last few years in recent times. However, expenditure management has not received as much attention, and despite it being extremely important. After all, if you are saving 1 rupee, it is akin to generating 1 rupee. So we are going to look at the expenditure aspects of municipal bodies in the Indian context. To do so, we will be talking about a bunch of things. First, we will be examining the extent of functions, roles, responsibilities typically assigned to municipal bodies in India compared to other levels of government, compared to other jurisdictions. Following this, we will talk about the typical functions that are assigned to municipal bodies in India. How have the municipal bodies been performing this? How good they are at this? Do you think any of these things need to be reevaluated? Additionally, what tasks they should be doing less of? Then we are going to look at the accountability aspects. What are some of the mechanisms by which we ensure, or typically Indian municipal bodies ensure accountability with respect to expenditure, and what have been some inherent limitations? Finally, we are going to conclude by looking at some low-hanging fruits for expenditure reforms in the Indian context, right? How do we improve on the current situation? So this is how the agenda looks like, at least for the next 1.5 hours or so. Now, I just also want to talk about what is going to be the scope for today's discussion, right? It's going to be expenditure related functions of municipal bodies, and we will try to attempt to keep this as much as possible municipal revenues out of ambit of today's discussion. I know it is difficult to separate revenues from expenditure, but we'll try to do that. It's not that municipal revenues are not important. That's why we're doing this. But because we already have had a detailed discussion on municipal revenues 2 weeks back, in case the audience, anyone from the audience wants to look at what we arrived at, what were some of the important points that were highlighted, you can always look at the session. It is already there on YouTube. So we'll try to restrict ourselves as much as possible to the expenditure functions of the municipal bodies. So this is how the context looks like. When it comes to structure, we'll start with context setting by Dr. Debarpita. She will be presenting some slides. And after that, we will be having Q&A with the panelists. And at the end, we will be taking questions from the audience. And in case anyone who is listening to this session right now has any question at any point, you can always put it in the chat window, or else whenever it is possible, right, we will reply to you, or at the end we can have a dedicated session for Q&A. Just again, something a hygiene related recommendation. Whenever you are sending a question, right, whenever you're putting a question, it's always better to avoid long anecdotes. Try to have specific questions. So that will ensure that we will get the right set of, it will be easy for the person who's responding to answer. So let's get started on this. And we'll get started with Dr. Debarpita. Dr. Debarpita, given your expertise in municipal finances, would you help us with the broader context to this discussion? Could you give some, could you shed some light on the overall municipal finance situation right now? I think you want to present some slides.
Yes. Yeah. Just one second. Let me just. Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. First of all, thank you so much, Kirti sir. I have been an ardent follower of the INHAF webinar series since, the COVID-related lockdown. And it's an honor to be here for the first time. I hope I can again come back. Now, the topic of today's discussion is quality of municipal expenditure. As Sarthak very rightly said, there's so much of discussion around municipal receipts or revenue, as we say, but not so much on the use of those receipts and the revenue to what it is being put. Because at the end of the day, what matters is the service delivery that we get as citizens of our cities. Now, these are some recent and past and recent comparisons of service delivery outcomes of our cities. And if you do see, we are almost nearly there. Now, these are government numbers. There could be independent ones which do not agree with these ones. But in terms of solid waste collection, we are almost there. But when it comes to water supply and treatment of sewage, there is still considerable gaps, right? Not just these three, there would be gaps on other domains also, right? That municipal bodies or the urban local bodies, as we refer to them, cover. Now, how to cover the gap? As per a very recent estimate by the World Bank said that we need to spend about 1.2% of our GDP for the next 15 years on capital expenditure, so that we can reach that level. But currently, or rather not currently, but till some time back, we averaged about 0.6%. Now, this is considering capital expenditure both by municipal bodies as well as by the state governments, which also runs our cities to a large extent, provides a lot of services, basic services in a lot of our cities through their parastatals. So definitely it is, now somebody else might come up with a different benchmark with a different, quantum of requirement of investments. So investments definitely have to be more. There's no questions about that, right? But if I take a step back, and the question that comes to me, okay, investments have to be more. There has to be more efficiency in terms of spending that investment also, in terms of spending efficiency. But a key question that also comes up in your mind, where does that investment, where does this investment has to be made and on what, right? Now, if you look at the overall governance frame, how to arrive at that, if I think aloud, if I look at the overall governance frame in India, when it comes to cities, the urban local bodies are largely wards of the state government, right? In terms of their functions, that what is it that they should be doing? What are the services that they should be providing to the citizens? In terms of their functionaries, a lot of the municipal, officials till date are, state government officials on deputation. And in terms of funds, right? So both in terms of revenue as well as in terms of expenditure, how much should you be spending on certain areas, right? A lot, almost everything, is directed by the state government and passed down to the urban local bodies. And this is enshrined more or less in the, the governance framework of India through the 74th Constitutional Amendment. While the ULBs are given their remit of responsibilities, they were not given their remit of the taxes or the finances that they could really, decide to collect by themselves. That is also decided by the state government. Now, that also in a way, has an impact on how they spend the finances that they are handed down in a way. Because apart from, of course, they have those tax handles like property tax, trade and license in certain cases, and other, user charges, etc., etc. But how much they can charge, at what rate, who to charge it to, the state governments, they are not independent really in that true sense. So in a way, they're constrained both fiscally, capacity-wise, and otherwise. A brief, overlook, if you see that even for the, very big cities of our, the Bangalore, Chennai, and Hyderabad, something as simple as water supply and sewerage is really not under their remit, but under the remit of the state government agencies to provide. Right? As a result of which, what it has led to, and it's a, it is a very well-known number that our municipal finances, both in terms of their receipts and the expenditure, which is slightly lower than the receipts, is around 1%. Compared to, Brazil, other, even BRICS countries, the average is usually between, 4% to 7%. It goes up to 7% for Brazil. Now, that could be by design an outcome of the governance structure as well, but not know so much as to go behind the reasons for this number. I try to understand, okay, now I am, somebody at the union government level or the state government level who's a policy maker. And I already know I'm constrained by this, set of constraints. I have my 74th constitutional amendment, etc., and I have to look after my ULBs. How really do I decide, how much money and how should my ULBs, how much money should I give my ULBs? How should I help them on what really, should I help them decide, guide them on kind of spending money? And even the municipal commissioner, how is it that I go about deciding that? Now, if I look at take a bird's eye view, India is very top-heavy urbanized, right? Most of our population, and these are extrapolated numbers for 2018, most of our people live in the million-plus, cities, and the municipal corporations, about 55%, which are usually the bigger of the corporations, which population of 3 lakh or more, about 55% of our urban population lives there. Then comes municipal council and Nagar Panchayat. But the important thing to be seen here is that no way can we really, ignore the bottom two tiers of our urban governance frame. Why? Because of the sheer number of these places and the very impactful role that these cities, towns have to play in ensuring regionally balanced growth, which is also climate friendly going forward. It is known that, India also this top heaviness has been increasing. But again, as I said, that these numbers are so large in terms of the numbers of municipal council and Nagar Panchayats that they cannot be ignored. So if I were, how a policymaker at the state government level, and I have to decide that, okay, how is it that, I go about distributing my money through the SFCs or other mechanisms? How is it really do I do it? From a municipal expenditure per capita view, the total municipal expenditure per capita view, and this is revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure both. The municipal corporations are up there. The Nagar Panchayats and the municipal councils are more or less, move in tandem to each other. But a very interesting picture emerges if I look at revenue expenditure per capita and capital expenditure per capita. What I do see in terms of revenue expenditure needs, my municipal corporations are way ahead of my, smaller ULBs. But the same is not in the case of capital expenditure. So when it comes to probably capital expenditure parity, to some extent, of course, the quantum has to be definitely increased, right? And maybe across all 3 tiers. But in terms of capital expenditure parity, there's not really that much needs to be done. It is that the quantum en masse have to be increased. So the question that comes to my mind is, do we really need to look at the capital expenditure needs by the city classes? And as a policymaker, how do I really, this graph of course does not provide, this just provides this question in my mind. This does not provide those answers. And this is for each state government, urban development official to minister and secretary to really determine. But if this is the picture, how do you really, I go about, what do I make out of it? Is it that my bigger cities are, more strapped for capital expenditure? There is enough capital expenditure already happening in my, smaller municipal bodies. So I would just leave, with these two questions, right? And these are, the questions that come from thinking aloud, that, capital expenditure in municipal services in million plus cities. Do they need to be prioritized? Million plus cities and other big municipal corporations. And should capital investments rather from a broader context in terms of enhancing transportation connectivity and other development expenditure, infrastructure, which directly feeds into generating more economic activities, be the focus of our smaller cities? Are our smaller cities already well served? So I will just stop here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Debarpita, for this quick overview and also for raising some important questions. I completely agree with you when you say that somewhere our urban local bodies are usually subordinated to the priorities of the state government. Also, they have responsibilities, but generally finance doesn't follow. Finance does not. Ideally, finance should follow functions, but that is not what is happening, right? That's against the principle of devolution. So completely agree with some of these things, and I think as we proceed we'll find out some some answers to these questions that you have already raised. Now I have some questions. In fact, I'll go one step back, right? We looked at some of these trends. I want to go a bit the way the levels of governments are organized. The functions are assigned to different levels of government. I have some questions related to that. We'll go back to that, some legacy questions, and then we will come back to some of these expenditure priorities. Now, if you look at local governments around the world, they assume varying levels of significance in their respective polities. For instance, in some places, Canada or the United States, the local governments often function as extensions of the state governments. In contrast, some places like Brazil, the local governments, they are again equal partners, so as to say, with the national government, state governments. In some other jurisdictions, for instance, Switzerland, the local governments generally are assigned more responsibilities, or they play a more significant role, even more than that of the federal government. Now, in the Indian scenario, how is the scenario? How does the situation look like? Right, the role of local governments, I am assuming, has been typically limited, and again, it's not just the 74th constitutional amendment, right? Before that, also, the role was typically limited. Now, what could be some of the legacy reasons for not devolving enough responsibilities to the local levels, right? And as Dr. Debarpita also pointed out, now maybe you are assigning higher responsibilities, but again, they are typically the priorities of the state government. So this question is directed to Dr. Ravikant, and again, Dr. Debarpita, if you would like to weigh in. Traditionally, right, even before the 74th constitutional amendment came into being, what could have been the legacy reasons for not devolving enough authority to the local levels in Indian context? Dr. Ravikant?
Yeah, so let me at the outset say thanks, and I'm very happy that this program is continuing, and I'm also part of it. See, legacy is that if we look at the pre-independence time, then, well, Bombay presidency had much ahead in terms of the local government. And therefore, across the India, you will see that even today, the maximum functional domain is of Gujarat and Maharashtra municipal corporations or municipal bodies. In fact, way back, I come from the Baroda, and there were certain cities which were having, of course, local government started first in Madras, then Calcutta. All those things were there, but they were limited to one city. When we come to all the cities across the state or the presidency, then Bombay presidency was much ahead. the functional domain of the municipal bodies traditionally was much high. In fact, 74th Constitutional Amendment did not add any functional domain for Gujarat and Maharashtra municipal corporations or municipal bodies. And even today it continues. If you see, then Pune, you take Pune, Ahmedabad, Surat or anything, their functional domain is the largest in India. Even Pune, Ahmedabad and Mumbai, they have even medical college and medical hospitals. Now that hospital is not their function. Now, what happened in other places, urbanization was also limited. And when we got our constitution, everything went to the state government. Correct. And then, as we know, it's a creature of the state government. So it depended on that state's political economy, what functions to be given. So it's a tradition has to do a lot. For example, in Gujarat, all cities manage even fire brigade. Correct. But in other many states, fire brigade is done by the state level. But per se, I don't have any value judgment. What really is that we have never studied that what would be the best thing and who should be doing that. So that kind of service, in fact, any function can be done by the municipal bodies. And in fact, Pune, Ahmedabad, they run medical college successfully and very high level tertiary hospitals by Mumbai, Pune and these. Or over the years, they were running the public transport. Correct. But in many other cities, it's not there. Even they run the water supply and sewerage, but in certain cities, we have gone for the, in fact, water supply. In India, there are 5 models. In certain state, it is managed by the public health engineering department, say Rajasthan. No city manages, correct, water supply and sewerage in the Rajasthan. Or there are other states, for example, Karnataka, or then there are 4 cities where there is a city parastater, Bangalore Water Supply Sewerage Board, and then Hyderabad Metro Water. Then there are state level parastater like Maharashtra Jeevan Pradhikaran and UP Jal Nigam, which are dabbling into it. Then there are classical local governments or municipal corporations of Maharashtra and Gujarat, which manage water supply and sewerage over the years, fully, whether Pune, Ahmedabad, Surat and everything, correct? That right from source augmentation to delivery, everything is done by them. And then there is now somewhere there is a PPP kind of a experiment where in private player working with this, with the local body. So we have 5 models, but the LCM of all 5 is more or less inefficiency. So there are certain factors which are beyond a per se institution specific. So local governments are managing fire brigades well, but then there can be a state where fire brigade is not managed by even by the state government. So moot point is that we have not looked into the which government, which service, who should be managing, and if it is managed by local government, what it needs. Correct. Yeah. In fact, not more than 50 cities we have local transport, public transport as of today even. While there have been successful example, and for 100 years, public transport is managed by certain cities and other cities are not thinking of it. So there need a groundbreaking studies, and we need to look at the division of labor and then scale of economics and all those factors. But that kind of serious studies are not carried out. Okay. It is all political economies deciding, traditions deciding, and particularly where urban was not the focus, naturally it remained with the state. And Constitution one way was a watershed movement that everything has gone to the state, deciding function and fiscal domain and autonomy and authority, everything being decided by the state government. Thank you. I will stop here.
Thanks, Dr. Ravikant. So political economic considerations, traditions have played a very significant role here. Dr. Debarpita, would you like to weigh in on this?
I think it's purely, where the money is, right? Cities generate, estimates say about between 55 to 75% our GDP. I think if you look at simple state GSDPs, it will not be very different. If you look at simply the the overall tax collected and the receipts of the entire state government from their cities versus their rural areas, I think a similar or maybe a more starker picture might emerge for certain states, right? So why should state governments, in a way, really, give that away, right? That is point number one. The point number two, which comes up, is in terms of, do the cities really, the ULBs, have the capacity to govern themselves in their current form? We might say that this is not the ideal way. New York, the mayor of New York has a lot of power, or the mayor of Bern has a lot of power, or that of Brussels has a lot of power, and over the city economy and what goes on in their city. But they're able to deliver on it, right? That is how the institutional structures have been built of those cities. So the cost of doing that reform in India, right? Does the cost really outweigh the benefit? Is possibly something that, political economists, political scientists should really deliberate on. And they should look at it again, not from a theoretical perspective. Along with that, from a pure empirical, finance-driven perspective, right? Then only I think things will start to make sense, and possibly we will arrive at some very implementable and practical, workable, actionable solutions. That is.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Debarpita. So basically, it's the incentives of the state, and also at the current level, right? What is the capacity of these urban local bodies, which might have a role to play? Now, again, building on this particular strand, so we had the 74th constitutional amendment, and it's almost like 30 years to that. Right now, over these last 30 years, how have things changed? When it comes to the municipal bodies, do we see any discerning trends? Have they been taking up more response? Have they played more significant roles with respect to certain functions? Has there been some sort of convergence, like municipal bodies across the country doing similar sort of things, or has there been some sort of divergence? So I would ask this question to Tarun, and then to Prabhat, and then Dr. Debarpita, you can weigh in. So Dr. Tarun, would you like to add?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarthak. And I've been very keenly listening to Dr. Ravikant and Dr. Debarpita's inputs. I think they're very, very relevant in current context. I think this discussion couldn't have happened at a more topical time because of the very recently the union budget got released. And again, because I was just looking at the numbers, I think it's just the MOU, I think again just got about 1.7%, and which is against the number that just Debarpita quoted, that Indian cities today, if you just look at the global scenario, Indian cities the global cities are contributing about 80% of the global GDP. And that's the same scenario here in India as well, that we are at, as we speak right now, it's about 63%, and it's going to be 75% by 2030. So the number is going to increase, and there's a lopsided disadvantage against the cities, and this has been continuing. Now, coming to the 74th Amendment, let me just problematize this entire situation right now and why we did what we did way back in 1992. I think if we really have to theorize and what was the theory behind it, what was the principle actually governed that. I think the principle that really governed that was the principle of subsidiarity. And the principle of subsidiarity very clearly said that, okay, the agency or the person which is closer to the problem should be resolving that problem. And before that, I think when the 74th Amendment was not there, and when the functions were not devolved to the local bodies, I think this navigating the urban ecosystem was a nightmare for any person. And we have done surveys, and people have told this, and to citizens have told us, just to navigate the urban ecosystem, just to get service delivery from the city governments, it's still a nightmare, right? But the idea is simple. The idea was simple, that the 74th Amendment, what we can do is we can bring governance closer to the citizens. The idea is, of course, it's still not ideal. Ideal would have been that we actually bring the governance at the doorstep of the citizens, right? So over the 30 years, what my field experience has been saying that, still the municipal bodies are still very toothless, very weak bodies. And I'm sorry, I'm using these hard words for municipal bodies, because this is what the experience has been. Barring few exceptions, as Dr. Ravikant said, there are few municipal corporations in the state of Gujarat and Maharashtra. And I just want to quote one of the examples, Dr. Ravikant, and you will be very amused to hear that, because when we did this survey back in Ahmedabad and Mumbai, we were actually understanding the level of citizen participation, and we had a component called knowledge, and we were weighing it against the basic service delivery in those cities. And our hypothesis was simple, that those citizens who have higher knowledge will be, of course, getting better services. But when we did this study in Ahmedabad and Mumbai, the basic service delivery score was very low, but the knowledge score was very high. And we were really perplexed why this was happening. We ended up understanding that all the functions are actually provided by the municipal organization itself. So that's it. Whenever we ask this question, who do you think this function is provided by? Which organization provide this function? There's no parastatal involved at all. It was just saying one. They were just saying municipal corporation, right? So this particular kind of paradoxical situation arose in these two cities, that even though they are actually giving all the services, the quality of services was very, very poor. So even today, Sarthak, if I had to really say that, based on what my field experience has told me, that cities are still very weak in terms of course, as Debarpita said, the expenditure itself is very weak. The revenue streams are still very, very weak, because we believe that the attempt was to bring these city governments closer to people, and we're still failing miserably in that. So I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Tarun. Prabhat, would you like to add to this?
Thanks, Tarun. So if we look at the functions that cities have been providing, so as per Constitution's 18 functions may be devolved to them. But if you look at the across India, if you take a step back and see what's happening across India level, so only 4 or 5 functions cities are kind of performing. Solid waste management. I'm just seeing the overall trend. If you look, solid waste management, street lights, maintenance and development of urban roads, maintenance of parks or greenery, and in some cases, kind of providing water and sanitation services, not everywhere. So these are the basic functions. And in addition to that, there is a mix of functions that other cities are providing. If you think about what has been the recent trends, and as you know, finance should follow function. So if you look at what is and the finance, if you look at trends in the empowerment of finances, you will see there is a considerable shrinking in untied funds available to cities. Year on year, the untied fund that is available to cities is shrinking. If you think, what does that mean? That means the functions that are supposed to be devolved, or even kind of they use money to devolve to do certain functions. If they don't have untied funds, it means somebody else is telling them what to do with the funds. If somebody else is telling them what to do with the funds, even if it's for solid waste management, or even it is for water and sanitation, then can we say that it's the city that is empowered enough to perform that service? No, there will be a lot of diktat that would be coming from either from the union government or state government, and you will see there are many places where cities are building something, but the ownership is not there. They are not utilizing the services in the way they should be utilizing those services. If you and the recent trend in decentralization, the trend that we are seeing is more, rather than giving more power to cities, we are seeing the more powers being taken away from cities. And why do we see this trend? Because most of the money that is coming as tied grants, and those tied grants are related to certain schemes and missions. And there is a pressure on kind of elected governments at both central and state to perform on those schemes and missions. So that, and rather than building capability at the municipalities to use that money to provide services, we are falling back on parastatals, or in some cases, SPVs have been created to discharge the functions of the municipalities. So even if you look at most of the schemes and missions, many of them are run by parastatals. Even the places where there was not much, like in many places, municipalities were not providing water or sanitation. If through a central scheme or a state scheme, money is going to, or money is earmarked for those municipalities, rather than providing hand-holding support or capacity building of that municipality to help them perform that service, we fall back an easy option of giving it the parastatal to go and design and develop a water supply station or water supply and kind of water supply network in that city. And then the kind of the thinking is ki one way we will hand it over back to the cities, but that never happens, or even if happens, there is not complete ownership from the city itself. So I would say if you look at the broader trend, it's more powers taking away from the city. Even if you look at the kind of, we know there is not so Ministry of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj has taken some steps where they have tried to do some activity mapping. Even if we say water and sanitation, there are different for each, like water and sanitation would have 10 activities or 12 activities. In many places, some activities would be performed by state government, and that's for greater good itself, because some of the things, what should be the quality of water that should go into the houses of people, some of those things need to be kind of done by state government or central government. There would be something that needs to be devolved to the local bodies. Ministry of Panchayati Raj and Rural Development has done this type of activity studies where they try to map what are the different activities within a particular kind of function that rural local bodies are doing. The same kind of study haven't been done for municipalities yet. So there is a need for a study where we are looking at responsibility mapping and activity mapping. Then we would know what is the actual kind of functional devolution in the country.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Prabhat. Dr. Debarpita?
I think, how do we really, how do ULBs, how are they really perceived in the overall scheme of things? They are on paper governance units of governance, right? They are government bodies. But what they actually do on the ground is that they are executing agencies. If you look at the union government, if you look at the state government, they do set the policies, right? The union government sets various kinds of policies across almost all sectors. Now, the state government does the same, whether it comes to land, whether it comes to health, whether it comes to education, whether it comes to financial markets, whether it comes to, how a certain kind of business activity like, MSMEs are to be regulated. Both the union government and the state governments have a say. Do our cities have any such kind of say in terms of active policy making? Or is it that whenever a particular scheme has to be, or a particular service has to be executed? For example, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban, in all the small cities, who is the implementing agency? The urban local body, the smallest of municipal councils or the Nagar Panchayat, are supposed to implement so many, oversee the construction of so many houses under the, various sub-schemes of Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, which was taking place. Is a ULB really equipped to do that? The ULB has virtually no say as to, probably, in terms of, setting up the overall urban housing policy, even for its, its own population, apart from, just doing the demand assessment, etc., etc. It's an executing agency, right? And it is not that it cannot excel as an executing agency, but we have to acknowledge the fact that that is how the urban local body is functioning in the current schema of things. And how do we go about empowering the urban local body really to do that very well so that it can move to the next step, which is take a stand on, developing policy for economic prosperity, for, improving the health, improving education from a purely policy perspective, what needs to be done, not just doing that, right? Which is directed by the union government and state government. I think we need to acknowledge that.
Okay. So again, the perception about the role of the urban local bodies. Dr. Ravikant, you had your hand raised. You had some observation, comments on the same?
Yes, you asked a pertinent question after what has happened after 74th Constitutional Amendment in functional domain. I agree with what others said. But in simple fact, if I have to say, those municipal bodies or ULBs, whatever they were doing, correct, they continued to do. But after 74th Constitution Amendment, actual functional delineation or devolution hasn't happened. Somewhere there are reports about functional decentralization, but those are cosmetic changes. Means sometimes function is on paper given by GR, but actual autonomy not given, functionary is not given, resources not given. And Prabhat has made a very pertinent point. See, usually in public finance, finance should follow the functions, correct?
Yeah.
So there should be function finance symbiotic relationship.
Yes.
Here it has happened other way around. Here finance is following and dictating the functions what local bodies will do. And that has become highly top down. See, till 2003-4, central government was devolving just 350 crore rupees for urban. Today, with the Central Finance Commission giving 30,000 crore and Government of India giving through its various missions another 30,000 crore, actually 60 to 65,000 crore come into urban system. So naturally they are dictating or they are deciding what functions will be done or what projects. And it has gone away from the functions. It is only project based. And those projects also only in 3-4 terms: water supply, sewerage, solid waste, or somewhere roads and this thing. So here our places, it is the finance which has followed, and 74th constitutional hasn't led to a real devolution of any function. So those municipal bodies were not having function, they didn't go. Bombay was doing hospital management, continued because of political economy. Function has not been taken away. Or Pune is doing hospital, public transport, but no new city has started doing public transport after 74th constitution amendment. And then earlier Debarpita made a very good point. Even if today as a state government, I want to give say fire brigade following the Gujarat model, in Punjab, I want to give fire brigade to the local bodies. As a policy maker, also there is no study, and I'm not sure if it is given, whether it will be beneficial or it will be a loss making. So that confidence is not there. That kind of a ground truthing is not there, that if particular function is to be given, what needs to be done? What will be the SOP? How we will build the capacity and give that function? So not only political economy, the status quo has prevailed, and we have moved towards the tied grant, conditional grants, tied grants, and it has become project based. And wherever the ULBs are not there, it is the parastatals which are doing. In fact, now out of 100 rupees invested in urban infrastructure, municipal body share has gone to 45%. 55% money gets spent through the urban parastatals. And out of that 45 rupees, municipal own source revenue contribution is just 15%. 85% of the new urban investment is done through this project funding, scheme-based funding, through the central and state. So city's role has relegated to 7%, if I can say, 15% of the 45%.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Ravikant. In fact, I'll just add one point to what Mr. Prabhat was also saying, and you also mentioned. So because of these tied grants or tied grants dictating the functions, that Vixelian connection that is there, it gets broken, right? Ideally, who decides, who benefits, who pays, right? There should be an overlap, but this is what is not happening, and it impacts in the functioning of these systems. And as we were just discussing, there seems to be a massive overlap. Urban local bodies are just seen as implementing agencies. So I just want to go to that specific question that I have in my mind about the level of clarity that is there when it comes to functional responsibilities or the division of functional responsibilities between state union and urban local bodies. Again, there seems to be some sort of concentration and in some cases overlap between functions of state and urban local bodies, functions of urban and urban local bodies. So I would go to Dr. Tarun first, and then Dr. Ravikant, Mr. Prabhat can weigh in. Dr. Tarun?
I think it's again a same kind of situation that. But before I answer that question, I think just to add to what Dr. Ravikant just said and Dr. Debarpita was point, I think that's a very relevant point. In terms of capacity, can you believe that in city of Bangalore till date we don't have a council? I mean, can you even expect that for once that the state elections will not happen. I mean, they've been happening continuously, and we just don't have the council for last 4 years, and nobody cares. Right? The city elections have not happened, and when I was doing my survey in Chennai, the council did not exist for last 10 years. So if you don't, the council is not there, and the people also don't care. I mean, citizens also don't feel that the cities are important for us. The city governments are important for us. State also are, of course, showing their own through all their ways and means that city governments don't matter to us. So where will the citizens go? Right. So all these things matter. And that's exactly where I think, Sarthak, coming to your point about the role clarity. It is actually the state, it's actually benefits the state to do not have role clarity. Right. In terms of like as long as there is an overlap, states are actually can actually have maintain that stranglehold over cities. They always want to maintain that as long as they can, because of if the strangleholds are maintained, the finances nobody can question. And the most important point, Sarthak, is that if the stranglehold is maintained, nobody's going to question them. Accountability is missing. And that's exactly the point. If the accountability is not there, accountability metric is not there, states are happy. Nobody's going to question on their finances, why finances are not given, why the council elections are not happening. All those things, these questions will never be asked. So on that, I think it's very, very clear the state want to remain the way they want to keep the status quo as long as possible. They want to eliminate the state governments. They want to weak the 74th Amendment as much as possible, so that this question of even overlapping that you just talked about doesn't exist anymore.
Even Maharashtra elections hasn't happened for 3 years, and that is in spite of the fact 74th Constitution Amendment says that within 6 months, elected body should be placed. Now, what tricks are played is that they will change the configuration of the election wards. Sometimes they will add new this kind of a thing. New kind of villages will be added. Then there will be again a contest. So for last 3 years in Maharashtra, no municipal body, there is an election. Not only Bangalore, here all the cities, all municipal corporations, correct? And it's a flagrant violation of the 74th Constitution of Constitution Amendment essence of local democracy.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Ravikant. Prabhat?
So I think I will just agree with Dr. Joshi and Dr. Tarun as well. So I think the role clarity, and we also know most of the places and any organization, even the organization you work in or I work in, the role clarity, it's not just about you know what you want to do, but also there is a clear accountability. Role clarity and accountability comes together. And if there is no role clarity, there won't be any accountability. So I think, and we know because there are, the more bigger the city, the bigger the challenges. There are multiplicity of organizations, and also most of the places they don't have, and if there are conflicting jurisdictions as well, it becomes more complex. So most of the kind of the Indian cities, the bigger Indian cities are facing challenges with the role clarity. In the smaller cities, I won't say it's a role clarity problem, but it's more a capability problem. And also because they have been doing something, they will continue to do the same thing. Even if the more role has been given to them, they don't know they have to do the other functions as well. So that's also like, okay, this is your area of work and this is what you are expected to do. So there is not enough kind of, if you say, take any small city, they will only continue to do what they have been already been doing, even if more is expected or more is expected constitutionally or as per the release of GO order. I think someone said that we govern through government orders and executive orders. So there are a whole bunch of government orders and executive orders that get issued that nobody is keeping a track of, nobody is aware of. That's where the role clarity also becomes very muddy.
Yeah. So in fact, I have a counter question to this. So again, ideally, it makes more sense to have this clarity, and which in turn will improve accountability, and which also ensures that everyone is better off, right? The state does what it's supposed to do, the union does what it's supposed to do, the urban local bodies do what they're supposed to do, and again, the economy benefits, the society benefits. Now, why are we in that low equilibrium situation where this conflict, that conflict in jurisdictions keeps on continuing? And again, what can we do to change this particular equilibrium? Maybe anyone, Dr.
The
Ravikant
main
or
problem is that
Tarun?
right from the Constitutional Assembly discussion, we haven't decided urban policy or role of urban cities or urban sector in our life. Correct. So we do not. So what need to be done is that there should be a national discussion among all, and there is a need of a political solution for this. Our political bosses and policy makers need to agree that okay, this is what we want our cities to do. This is the role, and then that role clarity will come. Today there is no role clarity because we haven't never given mind that what city should function, what is the role of cities in, though we go on saying it as a growth of engine, correct, or it's a growth engine, and all those are words only to speak. No, we haven't sat together, and there is a need like a when discussion happened in Constitutional Assembly, so their churning must happen across the India, and finally there should be a political consensus. And unless until that come through, what resources local bodies should have, what functions they should have, and what would be the pathway to create. We are calling Amrut Kal and all those things, but we haven't crystallized our vision about the cities and its role. So you are asking about role clarity. There is no role clarity. Only clarity is about central and state. Urban is totally fuzzy, and therefore it is different in each state and within state in city to city. Because it has continued by the tradition, it has continued the status quo. And see, we do not have any local economic planning with the cities. Our cities are only executing agency, as Debarpita said. Correct? They are just like a servant. What higher level governments will take, go fetch the water, that's all. Cities do not have any role in our polity. It doesn't have any role in our economic development. Look at our entire economic planning. It doesn't talk in terms of cities. It talks only in terms of a sector.
Yeah.
We have economic planning. Debarpita will highlight more on that. But we have industrial policy, we have everything, but we do not have urban policy. We have different kind of cities. We have gateway cities, we have hill cities, we have tourist cities, heritage cities. Each city has a different potential. But never ever there has been a thought that how each city can contribute to the economic progress of India. What are each city's strength? And we haven't done economic geography, correct? Economic geographical study of city is not done. I don't say that per se give that to the local body, that power. They may not have capacity, but is there any department at the state level or national level which thinks about the economic role of a city, its economic potential, economic geography of a city, and how it can contribute to the nation progress? There is no department at national level or state level. I won't champion local government that it should be given to the local government. No, but let somebody think about it. No.
So again, this is you almost answered one question that I had kept for you, that what sort of functions should ideally be given to the cities, because again, it seems like we haven't even thought about some of these things. I would assume that principles of comparative advantage and all these things should have been taken into consideration, which usually doesn't happen which hasn't happened in the Indian context maybe. Dr. Tarun, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just to add to what Dr. Ravikant just now mentioned, I think it's about fuzzy. I mean, this fuzzy relation and overlapping. I think it's absolutely to the state's advantage to keep it even more fuzzier. I mean, that's exactly how it is. And I was at one of the cities called Ajmer, and I remember that it was happening. And just to give you how the state, just how brutal the state can be in terms of using their own powers. And I was just sitting and I was talking, and I was doing my survey, and I was asking what kind of revenue streams that you people have. And I was speaking to the municipal commissioner at that point in time. And I remember the Rajasthan elections were right just around the corner. And I was having this discussion with this person, and he said, and suddenly a call, he said, we have property tax, we have these, and of course the usual answers that of course the city has in principle in terms of revenue generation. And suddenly a call comes from the state officer, and the person says, how much property tax are you guys charging? And he said, this exactly this percentage we are charging. And he says, can you please reduce the percentage of property tax that you are charging in the next 1 year, so that because of these areas, because the elections are going to happen, can you please reduce that so that our voters don't get completely bogged down by that particular number, so that we want these people to vote for us. And that's exactly happened when I was there. So exactly what the point is, even though they have the right to actually have a revenue stream of property tax, how much percentage to be charged, what should be charged, all these things are completely decided by the state. This was happening live. I mean, imagine how much pressure that these people have to deal in every time. So the kind of, I mean, if you're talking about functions, I mean, functions again are a function of course, the amount of money that these people or these cities have. So that also has, again, within the stranglehold of the states. So this clarity has to be established as quickly as possible. Otherwise, the cities will become completely just instrument of execution, nothing else, nothing more than that.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Tarun. Prabhat, you want to add something?
Just one quick point. So even if we look at the what functions and what roles should cities play, it shouldn't be same for everyone. So India had 4,800 cities. We have kind of few cities, very large cities. The kind of roles or functions that they can play and the kind of functions or role a city in the 5,000 population can play can be completely different. So any kind of debate and all needs to identify different kind of cities and the role that the role that we want to play them. A one size fits all approach won't work.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Prabhat. So there can be some cities which can actually act as those hubs of growth, maybe, right? For instance, cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, right? They are the ones who play a very significant, disproportionately large role when it comes to creating more jobs, creating wealth, accepting migrants. So again, for them, the requirements might be something different. For a city which is slightly smaller than cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, it might be a different role. Completely agree with you on this. Now, since we have been talking about the role of cities, and we briefly touched upon the thing about accountability, right? How clarity and accountability, they go hand in hand. So let's talk about accountability with in a slightly more granular manner. Now, my question here is, there are different, right now, maybe there are certain ways by which accountability is ensured when it comes to municipal expenditure. One of the mechanism could be how budgets are prepared, right? Municipal budget allocations. Now, I just want to understand, given some of you have worked with municipal bodies, first-hand experience of municipal bodies. So what is generally taken into consideration? What are the factors that are usually taken into consideration when they are deciding the sectoral expenditure or what things should be taken into account, right? So what are the priorities? Is social productivity one of the factors over there or something else? And who are typically the prominent players who have a larger say in these decision making? So for this, I would go to Prabhat and then to Dr. Ravikant.
Yeah, I think Dr. Joshi would be better able to tell this, but I will take an attempt. As we know, if you think about the resource allocation in local bodies, I'm talking about urban local bodies, it's pretty incremental basis where there is, in most of the places, the resources are allocated by looking at the previous year's budget. So somebody looks at the previous year budgets and say increase everything by 10% or 15%, or mayor or commissioner would say, look, this year our city's budget should be XYZ. We are going to beat everything, and it doesn't have any correlation with what was the actual expenditure, what was the sectoral expenditure. So sadly, but barring few cities, of course, there are really good cities who have kind of doing well in this area. But if you look at the cross India picture, then it's really bad. And if you look at the variance of municipal budgets itself, largely the average variance would be even more than 25-30%. So that would be the overall national level. But here I think I will. So if you look at the municipal spending itself, most of the spending. There is a kind of revenue expenditure, capital expenditure. Within the revenue expenditure, there is a committed expenditure, salaries. There is salaries that you need to do. Then there are O&M expenditure. You can't do much. You have to do those expenditure. Even if you budget for it or don't budget for it, you end up doing that. So a street light needs to be switched on in the evening. It needs electricity. The city bill needs to be paid. So you can't do much. The major portion where there is certain play that can happen is the capital expenditure. I think rather than looking for all the expenditure, planning really well, even if cities start planning capital expenditure well, that's a good way to start. I will take a step back. There can be considerable savings even by looking at your operation and maintenance expenditure and linking it to thinking whether what are the unit costs, compared to other places, whether you are making a progress, you can save a lot of money. But just going back on the whether that planning is happening, no. Even if the planning is happening, it's more about any schemes, any type of projects, we need to allocate money to those projects. So that kind of planning is happening. We haven't gone to that level of where we are looking into which sector, whether these sectors make sense, whether there is a need, what would be the kind of the economic rate of return or even financial rate of return if we take X project versus Y project. That kind of rigor I haven't seen in most of the cities. Over to you, Dr. Joshi. We'll be better able to shed light on this.
Yeah, Prabhat has covered very nicely all the points. I can say simply is that it's highly mundane and rudimentary. Entire budgeting at a municipal level is just a rudimentary thing because, as he rightly said, how it happens, they just take a trend, what last year, how much has been spent, and there is an incremental approach. How any commissioner or politicians decide, well, whatever field staff is there during the year, whatever complaints has been received, then as I said, whole ball game capital account has changed. There is a dictate and there is a grant available. Municipal bodies do not have their own surplus to invest into urban infrastructure. So most, as I said, 85% of the urban investment in any city is nowadays happening because of the central and state government schemes, which are tied. So you have to follow whatever they have said, those projects has to be taken. Usually a commissioner, because I was preparing budget for 20 years, what we will do, we will ask all our engineers, what are your wish list? Which water line is to be required? Then there were people complain, political people, that is corporators, will say that in my area there is a need for a road. So it's highly local, it's highly annual. Unfortunately, we do not have any city preparing a capital investment plan of 5 or 7 years. Correct? That kind of a culture was tried to be brought in by Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewal Mission, which asked to prepare city development plan. But somewhere it was linked to the grant. And so as that grant has gone, that culture has gone. Very recently, we have started working. I have been saying that capital investment plan should be prepared. So with 2 cities and IFC, International Finance Corporation, has under advisory. So this year we will be working with 8 cities to prepare the CIP, capital investment plan. So there is no long-term kind of a thing to the this context. So annual, in Gujarati, there is a proverb, Padshe tem devashe. Kirti bhai will understand. So as the things will come, we will respond. So it's highly reactive rather than proactive. Then coming on a theoretical side, the cost analysis, comparative analysis, impact analysis. If I invest 1 rupee in water supply vis-a-vis the sewage or vis-a-vis this, that kind of analysis neither municipal body has a capacity to do, and entire academic institutions and professional institutions in India don't spare their attention. I see more that kind of studies, Debarpita will correct me, in rural areas. There are studies, sectoral studies of impact of investment and comparative investment analysis of different social sector, but somehow urban has got neglected. Nobody is coming. I haven't come about that kind of a research that if you will invest X amount, then you will benefit this much. Correct? So that kind of a understanding is not there. That kind of a capacity is not there. Not research body is there. Also, that kind of a capacity building is not done. Municipal commissioner and those are such a poor people, means we all in the urban system, that we have to think annually and we have to just be reactive, facing what is required every day. In fact, most of the municipal bodies lack a planning department of continuously planning, doing the city planning. I'm not talking urban planning, infrastructure planning, and all those things. And all has now become top directed. I don't have money, whatever money comes from, even now Central Finance Commission has gone for tide grant. 15 Central Finance Commission has said that you have to spend your money on the water supply and solid waste and air pollution. Now, air pollution is not my job, correct? But still, my 50% money has been taken away by 15 Central Finance Commission for air pollution, which is a task of a pollution control board and the traffic police. I have water pollution in my hand, but not the air pollution in my hand. I can't control the industry. So nobody is thinking all this thing is going, it's highly rudimentary.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Joshi. Now again, this seems to be slightly hapless kind of a situation that, okay,
Yeah, it's
yeah, yeah, but now again, something related to this as well. So one thing is, yeah, when it comes to deciding on the line items of the budget, again, it's the priorities are not necessarily taken into consideration. Priorities of the constituents are not necessarily taken into consideration. Other factors are at play. Factors are being decided at the top level. Now, another way by which usually accountability can be measured is by identifying what are the related outputs, related outcomes to the outlays, right? And I mean, you can compare the outlays with the outcomes or the outputs, and you can find out how things have been. There have been some instances, at least at the union level, at state level, that whenever the budget is presented, you also have an output or outcome framework along with that, which gives you an idea. Again, it's a different thing that we don't have an audit mechanism for that. And I was wondering, at the urban local bodies level, do we have some examples of this happening, or how is the scenario right now? How grim is the scenario right now, if I
no,
may
there
say?
is no performance budgeting, there is no planning and program budgeting. All these techniques are in the books, and there is no outcome budgeting. Yes, Bombay had prepared outcome budget, means TIS and others have prepared, but how far it is implemented? Some few cities have rudimentary performance budgeting. I mean by performance budgeting means where financial outlays are linked with the physical outlays, so that at the end of the year you can see that, okay, I planned 10 works in this 100 crore rupees where I am, correct? But even most of the budgets, 90% or 95% municipal budgets are only in financial terms, not backed by the what work from which point to which point. So it is not backed by the performance covenants. And top of that, there is no accountability. It's not audited. There is no cost audit, correct? There is no cost accounting at the municipal level. We are not talking of a double entry accounting system, which is getting introduced, but there is no cost accounting. So cost analysis is not there, correct? Cost efficiency is not a point, and there is no supervision. There is no law. There is nothing which independently analyzes the performance of municipal bodies in terms of outcome. And therefore, in last 15 years, such a huge amount has been put into compared to the earlier years by the state government or central government, but our service level benchmarks are not going up. Because neither central government, they ask for utilization certificate, but there is no service level benchmarking. They tried to introduce, but no city publishes service level benchmark. Now, very recently, Government of India has accepted a point that outcome-based grant devolution in Amrut and Swachh Bharat mission, the mission document says that money devolution will be on an outcome basis. But I don't know how they will be implementing. So nobody asks that, okay, I give you 100 crore for water supply. What would outcomes you will achieve? What service level improvement will be achieved? And there is no audit then by fund giving agencies, central government, state government, that whether that city really achieved increase in the water supply, increase in the sewage treatment for which the money was given. I will stop here.
Yeah. Dr. Debarpita, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, you might want to look at a study which was done, I think, a few years back at where I work at CSEP, which said that for some cities, which just looked at what is the amount of money that this municipal corporations are spending on solid waste management, and what is the outcome in terms of the Swachh Bharat mission ranking. And a very interesting finding came out that for certain municipal corporations, the spending was actually more than what was recommended by the HPEC Committee 2010. Yet, they did not rank that high on the Swachh Bharat Mission, rankings. So the question of, the spending efficiency, that how efficiently are cities spending money, that also is a big, question mark. I just wanted to flag up that study. If you have time, do look it up.
Thanks, Dr. Debarpita. Prabhat?
So quickly 2 points. So one is, although Dr. Joshi referred about service level benchmark, service level indicators being published by city. So we need to kind of, and that was, I think, being done since last 17, 18 years, if I'm not mistaken. We need to have evolved a framework for performance reporting, at least for larger cities or better capable cities. At least there is a 20 list of 28 indicators, but we know the quality of that reporting, and the process is not very rigorous process through which those reporting happens. So I think need for a better performance reporting system and kind of requesting for it. On outcome, like I will be happy even if there is a output tracking, where because and it's now we know most of the tenders, many of the tenders are electronic tenders. We know the finances are many places handled through electronic mediums or digital systems are being used. So to attempt, and we know most of the transactions are electronic. Your transaction or my transaction or even municipality transaction are electronic transaction. Taking it ahead and thinking whether we can move towards, at least we start reporting outputs. And this has been done in Narega. This has been done in Panchayati Raj for 15th FCC grants, which are the assets that has been built by using 15th Finance Commission grants or Narega. It's all out in public, and that has led to huge pressure, like social pressure, because anybody can go and access and look whether the work was done or not. So at least a level of output, and I think their state governments, MOU, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, can be a bit ambitious and push for all the expenditure. At least they should put what output has been created. If it can happen in a Gram Panchayat, I am sure it can happen in urban local bodies as well.
Yeah. So again, something related to the quality of services. Again, an institution like a municipal service regulator, right? Will it? I mean, these kind of institutions, how have their performance been? Will they be the ones who can at least create that need for improvement in the public delivery of services?
We do not have service regulator.
Yeah,
Service regulators we do not have.
Yeah, again, well, the question is, if you have
Yeah,
institutions such as this,
there should be. At the
and
moment,
how
there's
do
no
we
independent mechanism.
visualize the design for these kind of institutions in the Indian
Before
context?
going for that, let the funding given by the central government and state government should put the hard budgetary constraints and create a performance measurement and performance reporting system, as Prabhat said. Why can't central government, which is giving crores of rupees, can insist on, so money is given as a free lunch? Means the narrative is very worst. You will do whatever we are saying. Here is the money, take it on conditions, but we won't ask any accountability. This kind of a narrative is there. In Gujarati, again, there is a proverb, master mare nahi and banave nahi. So teacher is such a worse teacher that he is not teaching and not regulating or not penalizing. So we need to first, before coming regulator, whoever is there, let them create the system. Why can't state governments? Which state government looks at the service level benchmark? No city publishes, and the entire data set which is there regarding service level benchmark is wrong. In fact, Government of India concluded after Swachhata survey that all the cities are open defecation free. 4,300 cities, all are open defecation free. No doubt we did good work, means there was a 40% open defecation. We may have come out to 10%, but accept the fact that 10% still open defecation is there. But there comes a certification and everybody accepts it. Nobody challenges it.
So I have like last two questions. I will go one by one, and again, this is open for the entire house. Now, one of the problem that we consistently saw here is there is not much attention given to municipalities. The perception about municipalities is that of an agency. And again, when it comes to budgetary allocations, again, the constituents' requirements are not taken into consideration. So I was wondering, what can municipalities do better? So that community needs can be again the public can be better involved in the budgeting process, so that again the needs of the communities can get reflected better over there. So how can municipalities engage with their constituents, right? What can be some of the ways? And maybe this is if people can engage with municipalities better, this can signal to the states or to the higher level that okay, these bodies are more important, and maybe there will be the devolution and the finance and function, the finance as well as the functions, right? That overlap that is not there might get fixed in that. So yeah, again, open Prabhat, Dr. Debarpita, Dr. Joshi.
I, in fact, have a counter question or
Yeah.
the follow-on question to both Prabhat and Dr. Joshi. Since they work with municipalities at a ground level so much. And I know, Janagra especially has started working with smaller ULBs a lot over the, past few years. So why is it, do you really see that Nagar Panchayats, right, which are smaller bodies, they have greater citizen participation in overall, how the Nagar Panchayat functions? Vis-a-vis how, a municipal corporation like, say, MCD, Municipal Corporation of Delhi, or the MCGM, or the BBMP functions? Is it that the size of the cities are a constraint? Or is it that the incentive structures which are in place? It is very interesting, I was looking at the property tax collections, not to look at receipts per se, Sarthak, over the last, 5 years. And I found that even among the top municipal corporations, most of them have shown quite a significant jump over the last 2 years. Why is it so? The answer is very plain, and it's in a plain sight. The union government had, and possibly again, it's a hypothesis that I have, it has to be tested out. The union government laid down a condition that the state government could increase their borrowings by 0.25% if they undertake property tax reforms. And as per my data shows that over the last 2 years, Bhopal municipal corporations and all municipal corporations, if you see the big ones, and I'm very sure the smaller ones also, they have undertaken some reforms or the other. Somebody is doing GIS, mapping. Somebody is saying, okay, we will move from the annual rental value to the annual to the capital value system, etc., etc. So, is it the matter of size? Is it a factor? Is it that proper incentives? If the proper incentive structure can be pushed down from the union government because funds are flowing that way, right? That can solve the problem. Just again thinking aloud.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. There is an incentive structure. 15th Central Finance Commission introduced that it's an entry-level condition that the property tax reform should happen and property tax revenue should increase at the rate of SGDP. Then Government of India adopted it for Amrut and Swachh Bharat Mission as an entry-level condition. And as you rightly said, there came a special scheme of 0.25% higher borrowing limit for the state. But not all states again responded. See, Tamil Nadu responded. Tamil Nadu, after 24 years, changed their property tax base rates. And last year, I did exhaustive study of Tamil Nadu municipal finance, and see the miracle, it doubled. Revenue doubled in Tamil Nadu. Andhra Pradesh went for a capital value based system, adopted it, and it has led to the jump this. So these positive and negative incentives has played to some extent. Of course, some states haven't gone for property tax reforms. Coming back to the question earlier, Sarthak has raised, and it was regarding what municipal bodies can do better or how they can do better. See, at a national level or at a larger level, I said there is no agency. Why a city will perform better? What is the incentive to perform is better? There is no political incentive, correct? You can't then get better power or anything or a say in policy making. No. But there are exceptions also, and cities can improve. For take Indore example. Now all have implemented Swachh Bharat mission, correct? But if you really go to the Indore, and I was surprised, it is much, much, much cleaner. But same thing is not happening with other cities, because it became a first Indore did good work, and then people started taking pride into it that our city is #1 in India. So that whole social process happened, and there got an agency and incentive with the citizens and the city to take a pride that we are cleanest city of India, and really they maintain it. I have seen that even a small piece of paper fallen on this, there is a person to pick it up, and people now take care of not throwing littering on it. So such things can happen. Cities can perform better provided that kind of a incentive or that kind of a political agency they get. Today there are certain cities doing well, but they are treated same way the other non-performing. Correct. So if there is a non-performing city, and within then MP, Bhopal is not that clean, Gwalior is not that clean. What happens in Indore, that social cloning doesn't happen in other places. And then the ranking is such that I don't want to name the cities, but I am living in the cities or other cities which got in the national ranking, but I don't know how they got the national ranking. But Indore really deserve, and there was a transformation. In fact, at state level also, I can see in last 10 years, Debarpita will also be interested to look into. In municipal finance, indices has been better by the MP. MP has gone for increasing the devolution. In municipal bodies have raised earlier it was in Bimaru state. But if you'll see the 15th Central Finance Commission data, it comes in the 5 cities, top cities in municipal finance. Correct? Earlier, traditionally, it was Mumbai, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Punjab was there earlier, or Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, but MP can come in. So things can happen. Municipal bodies can do better, but we need to create that conducive environment politically and in terms of role clarity and other things. And then the citizen participation.
Okay.
It can't happen.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Ravikant. Prabhat?
I think quickly 2 things. I think the incentives, Dr. Joshi mentioned it rightly, incentives have played out in property tax collection. But coming back to your actual question, Sarthak, on the like what all cities
Community
can
and
do. Yeah. So I think I agree with like Debarpita, the smaller cities do have a community feel, and there the elected representatives also are more accountable. It may be size, it may be size. It's the people are living locally. There is more what do you call? There is more accountability to local people than to the political masters. So in smaller cities, I think do have that community feel, and that's where I think the performance can be. Where there are many things that cities can do that don't require that much money. Community mobilization, kind of. There are many infrastructure pieces which are low-cost things that can be done through community itself. There is civic leader himself or herself can play a larger role, and I think an active civic leader. And some more entrepreneurial kind of elected representative can play a role and get things done. So there, I think there lies some hope. I think we can't expect a big bang decentralization or in the current political environment, I would say. I think slowly, wherever there can be, we can bring in community angle. And I think that's the way. In COVID, many places, health department did reach out to municipalities. Where should we put kind of vaccination camp, or how we should kind of isolate certain places. So I think those are the roles where I think increasingly, if we are able to bring them in, where there is some, if we have to mobilize community, maybe Anganwadis or something. I think one by one, I think giving certain powers, not it won't happen kind of overnight, but where there can be some community mobilization and all, that powers can be given. And I think one more thing, I think creating a narrative of economic growth. I think that's where I think and that we have to that whole entire piece is missing. Where you also mentioned, Sarthak, about migrant population, where cities goes out and say, look, we are migrant friendly. We care about the business. We will issue licenses with less effort. And if we are able to create that narrative, it won't happen everywhere, but even in few pockets, few ULBs, that can create a kind of positive incentive in the system.
Yeah, so this is an interesting point because in some cities we are going in the opposite direction. You might have noticed the recent Bangalore's, I mean, again, Karnataka's thing that came up, but again, it was taken back. So yeah, so apart from all these things that we discussed, do any one of you have some other recommendations that we need to take up with respect to municipal expenditures or municipal allocations? Any low-hanging reforms low-hanging fruits, right, that can be taken up. So again, with this I will end my questioning. So if anything is there, then we can take it up any point, and then we can take up some questions from the audience. Prabhat?
I think there are a lot of data sources that are being generated by digital expenditures and all. Just by looking at it, and we can do a lot. There is a lot of data in PFMS. There is a lot of data in state IFIMSs, financial management systems. There, many states have kind of implemented ERP-like solutions for managing financing and budgeted. But are decisions being taken by looking at that data? I would say most of the places, I think that's not there. By just somebody looking at that data or providing those insights to the relevant stakeholders, giving access of information to elected representative, because we know PFMS data is more sits with the administrative wing, or even all the data sits with the administrative wing, not with the elected representative. So I think with democratization of data, existing data where we don't have to create new systems and just using the existing data sets on finances, I think that can be low-hanging fruit that can be done.
Yeah, thanks, Prabhat. Dr. Ravikant and Dr. Debarpita, would you like to add something to this?
Central and state government should bring in performance measurement and that system and start putting in a transparent manner what is real situation. Don't go saying that like Swachhata Sarvekshan, everything is fine, our cities have become clean. No. Have a realistic, real service level data and put the condition, what outcomes, start it with this, because whatever money is given, create accountability for that efficient spending of that money. So what we require to improve is the rupee efficiency, rupee productivity. And whoever is giving the money, it is responsibility. See, when parent gives money to the children, it's not scot-free. It's with the accountability, and they vouch that how their child is spending that money. Simple, that thing first should be done. And second is taking confidence in people. What I said, Swachhata Sarvekshan and improvement in the Swachhata, Indore stand different because ultimately it took, so civil societies are playing big role, and then citizens participate and become people movement. There is a solution for any function which municipal body is doing by really integrating people with them, being transparent and putting forward to the people real situation. We are bad, accept that. Then share it with the people and then go to the people and start how we can improve together. And funding agencies putting in place a real performance measurement and evaluation system and transparent data sharing.
Thanks, Dr. Joshi. Debarpita?
Whenever during my course of research, I have asked experts like Dr. Joshi or others, that why did something work in certain city? Why did property tax reforms happen in Bangalore? Why did property tax reforms happen in Pune? Or, why did, water quality improve in certain city? Why did, even internationally, okay, at the city level? The answer that I got was there was a champion driving it. The municipal commissioner in the seat of power, right, had a vision and had the will that, yes, I will leave my mark, I will get my job done, right? I think tying that, extending the incentive structure, right, from, okay, giving tied grants or performance-based grants, while that is one mechanism, tying that with a system of doers at the administrative level. And many cities have done it already. The union government has done it through the placement of officers, etc. And it's a very doable model. So, and as Ravikant sir, mentioned, make it performance linked. You have already set the ball rolling by saying, okay, please increase your property tax collections by so much percentage. Then only will you get this much money. Now, please increase even your water service delivery level to 135 LPCD. Okay. And then you will, get this, benefits or something in order to really, to set the ball rolling.
Thanks, Dr. Debarpita. Kirti ji, do you want to add something?
I have, believe me, have made large number of points, as many as 11. And I don't think we have time, but I just wanted to kind of pick up 3 or 4 things very quickly, 2 questions and 1 or 2 observations. Number 1 is to portion blame where it belongs. And I think, make people like you and me responsible for things not happening. For instance, Ravi Saab very eloquently said how we are not thinking about cities at all. We do not think about cities at all. We loosely talk about, cities as centers for economic growth, but there is nothing. Nothing is absolutely correct. Now, interesting part of the story is this. As many as 35 years ago, someone thought very beautifully, and that was the Prime Minister of this country. Rajiv Gandhi said, if cities are the future of this country, if cities are the places where growth is taking place, we are mismanaging our cities, we are misinvesting in our cities, and we have very poor institutions to deal with our cities. And therefore, I didn't only talk about this. He set up the first National Commission on Urbanization. That was 35 years ago. I happen to be a very fortunate member of that commission. But that happened 35 years ago. You won't believe me, I wrote to Prime Minister. I've been writing to the Ministry of Urban Development to set up a second National Commission on Urbanization, because cities are firefighting. You require thinking. You require perspective building. You require, I think, reasoning. And that cannot happen the way things are happening. You won't believe me, and I feel very flattered to hear this. 35 years after national income, and when I wrote this to the Prime Minister, said, look, you're the only person who has talked about setting up a second National Commission on Urbanization in a country of this size. And I just can't believe this. What are education institutions doing? What are our experts doing? And I don't want to go into this, but this is just this example. Let me give a second example. When Habitat 3 happened in 2016, I wrote a 10-page letter to the Prime Minister and then the Minister saying, declare 2016 as the year of the city. It was very important to bring city in the consciousness of the people in terms of what they are, in terms of what they are not, in terms of what is to be done. Once again, there has been absolutely no response. So this was just one set of observation I wanted to make. There are two questions that I wanted to ask, which also is an identical, this kind of question, but what surprises me is not happening. And this is your subject, not mine as much. Like I remember World Bank saying, and then of course Ahluwalia committee saying, that in order to kind of meet our infrastructure deficit, investment requirement in the 20 years time is of the order of $36 billion. This is more or less the figure that was quoted. JNNURM, which was one of the better organized and better functioning urban infrastructure investment program, also was linked with the reform. You'll be very surprised to hear invested $14 billion in 10 years, that to huffing and puffing. The difference between investment in 10 years of 14 billion and requirement of 360 billion in 20 years is a huge. And if you're talking about India's touching 870 million people in 27 more years, and if nothing is happening, what are we doing? I personally feel we've got to be making films of cities as infernos and 2050. What kind of chaos it would be? And all this. So point I'm really trying to bring upon is this. That this common citizens cannot do much. Is it people like us who understand this, who talk about this, who see these issues? And we've got to take this up. Otherwise, believe me, the kind of chaos that we will see is unbelievable. So that's the third thing. I wanted to ask the fourth question, and Ravikant Ji, I've asked this question to Ravikant Ji earlier. And this relates to municipal corporation, the capacity. INHAF is working on what I call urban Manrega. We're working on sustainable urban employment guarantee scheme. What we're saying is this, that Manrega proved extremely important when pandemic happened, and its time has come for an urban program of that kind. We have working on the structure of it. We hope to submit a design program to the government at some point of time in the next 2 to 3 months. And when it comes to implementation, we are looking obviously at the municipal corporation and the municipalities, and knowing fully well that they cannot do it, knowing fully well that they don't have the capacity, knowing fully well that they do not equipped to handle this fairly complex task. Still, we do not have any other institutional alternative or option at the city level to whom this task could be given. Why do we have such institutional poverty at the urban level? And what are we doing with it? So this is the kind of very quick things out of 11 that I've listed that I thought I'll just put in front of you. And I really very strongly, like say for instance, for the last 3 years, I've been constantly hammering at this whole idea of not only National Commission on Urbanization, but the State Commission on Urbanization, because time has come for the State Commission. And we made structured presentation to government of Gujarat, structured presentation to Tamil Nadu government, structured presentation to Kerala government, structured presentation to Maharashtra government. Kerala has picked up something, but otherwise nothing is happening. So what I'm trying to say is this, that while we are searching and researching, there's a great need to reach out to where action is. And there's a huge blank. It is such a overpowering blank that it worries you. That things don't change, or if things change to take so long, where are we going to be? And therefore, I go on saying that I'm not worried about climate change as much as I'm worried about the urban challenge, which is right on our face, which is right, I think, in the midst of us, and we are doing very little. And capacity building, strengthening municipal body is part of that. And I think that is how one looks at this, and I think that's how it has to be seen. In terms of how do we become, in Ashoka's language, change agents, so that something happens. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. But thank you very much. And I think my last task is to really thank you. I've done it from the very beginning, and I know that we'll get late and there won't be enough time. But thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sarthak ji. You've been simply wonderful. Thank you, Ravikant Saab. You teach so much every time you come here. I hope your wife is looking at what you're doing. Debarpita ji, thank you. I still have problem pronouncing your name, but thank you. And I'm so glad to hear that you've been following our webinar, and it gives me a lot of joy and pleasure. Prabhat Saab, thank you very much. I think Janagraha, we essentially are trying to work out a series of webinars with you, and let's see how it works out. So thank you very much. And of course, before I end this and before I forget, let me thank you, Chitrakshi, my colleague, and Dr. Bhuma, who are working behind the scene to make this possible. I'm 82 years old and I forget everything. They are the ones who remind me all the time what I've forgotten. So thank you, Bhumaji, thank you, Chitrakshi, and thank you very much. But one more thing, one single thing. And that is this, that I'll take a minute on this. As I told you beginning, as a part of the knowledge product that is coming out, the webinar series, we produced a book on conservation in Indian city. And I want to tell you how we did that. That essentially was the product of 3 webinars we organized on that subject. But from the very beginning, we had decided, the moderators had decided that we are going to kind of go beyond the webinar. And therefore, we had about 20 panelists in 3 webinars over a period of 2 months or so. The anchors ensured that we not only had interesting feedback from the recording, but they got a commitment from each and every panelist that they will contribute a 1,500-word article or paper on the themes that they had elaborated. And that resulted into an absolutely stunning book. So I'm essentially giving idea, Sarthak Saab, and telling you, Devaji and Prabhakar Saab and everyone, that we're going to ask you to help us so that we could bring out a white paper that I talked about, which is meaningful and which has content. So we're going to reach out to you and request for your contribution. Thank you very much, and it's already 7:55, and we're very grateful to this very enlightened, very educating, and highly motivating discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.